And then I go further back, and I remember a time when I was really young and trying to get attention to my dad, and he was angry, so he turned around and shouted at me. So that sort of clawing on the parents' sort of clothes sort of thing, and trousers, skirt, whatever it is, and getting shouted at. So that fed into this sort of fear of interrupting, which there was a rejection prior to that, but it sort of put the icing on it, and then I'd associated it with phones. So if I'm ringing someone up and interrupting them, I can't do it. And that's made me realise where this came from. So once I'd worked out what it was, I could then start working with people, someone to try and actually sort of sort this out, so that I was not quite so reacting in such a strong way.
Andrew, welcome to the show, my friend. It's a pleasure to have you today. How are you?
I'm really good, thank you, Matt, and thank you for having me on. I'm really looking forward to the conversation. I've heard a few of the other episodes. I know some of the people you've spoken to, so I know what sort of space we're in, and it's going to be fun for both sides, and hopefully for the listeners as well.
Awesome. Well, we're having this conversation. I've recorded a couple episodes since I had a meeting with my production team, and they said, Matt, I want you to come out of the gate and just ask a hard-hitting question right away. So actually, this is different than the previous episodes. So we're going to dive in deep right away and hit you with an uppercut. So here's the first question, Andrew. I'd love to ask, what is the hardest thing that you've ever had to endure or overcome in your world that you might be able to share with us today?
Well, that's a big question, isn't it? What's the hardest thing? And I'm going to frame it with something which hopefully will become relevant later on and completely destroy your entire format at the same time.
Love
it. Because if I step back and actually look at my life and what I've been through and all the rest of it, I can't really put myself in the camp of I've had a traumatic life. Now, later on, hopefully, we're going to get to talk about purpose and things like that. That's an important thing within what I do and what we work with people. And one of the things has always been a bit of I'm going to call it a bugbear as a phrase. I've seen lots of inspirational speakers on stage telling me about all their story and all the rest of it, and they all have this sort of story that they come out with, which just sets your tears flowing, and you go, "Go, man, go!" and you're bought into it. And it's always a case of either they had everything and then lost it, or they started off with nothing and battled through adversity to get there. And I used to watch them and go, I don't have that story. I grew up in a nice family and we had a nice life, and I got educated. I'm a privileged, straight white male. I mean, God's sake, what's going to go wrong? So let's frame it and realize that actually recognize there's no major trauma that's happened in my life. However, we all have challenges, and that's the key thing. And I think that there is, I say this, but I set that up because I do think there are a number of us that go through life and we find it hard to recognize or accept that we have had challenges or things are difficult, because really, when you look around the world and you see what other people have gone through, what have I got to complain about? And it's, on the one hand, good to have that perspective, really useful. On the other, you also need to recognize what's going on with you and deal with that. So then to actually answer your question.
Thank you for the frame. Appreciate the frame to start. It's helpful.
I mean, probably the hardest thing for me was actually leaving my corporate job to go out on my own. And there's a number of factors within that. So depends how much you want on the story, but I can tell you about what I did and all the rest of it. But at the end of the day, I ended up working in a corporate career. I was there for the best part of 17 years. And if you want to, we can go into all what that is. Point being is that I had nothing against the firm. I liked working with the people I worked with. I just knew that I wasn't in the right place. And it took me a few years to actually sort of, while stewing in that, knowing that I shouldn't be here, to realize that I need to get out, and then actually to make the decision to get out. Because once you've made that decision to leave, or know you don't want to be somewhere, then it's really hard to engage and really hard to sort of be positive and all the rest of it. So it would be the case that I would feel physically sick driving into work.
Oh.
I wouldn't literally throw up over the car, but I would be retching. You'd feel that real knot in the stomach and just this resistance going into work, just because I knew I didn't want to be there. And ironically, as a leader of teams, my job was to motivate and inspire others from this position of, I don't want to be here, but let me help you with what you're doing and all the rest of it. So later on, I realized that part of my makeup and who I am and all the rest of it is running through me. I'm a people pleaser. There's reasons for that, but I'm a recovering people pleaser now, obviously. Nice. And that meant I didn't like upsetting people. I didn't like the concept of rejection. So telling the boss that I'm going to leave, or the bosses, and then leaving the team that I actually get on well with, and some people are kind of relying on me and respect me and all that sort of stuff, was not easy.
No, it wasn't. And this exact moment right here, and it may not have felt to you to be the most traumatic thing in the world, and I appreciate the frame that you shared with us. I know exactly what you're talking about. I had the same place in my world and came to that spot. And I know a lot of our listeners who are entrepreneurs have come to that spot before. And there's probably people listening right now that are stuck, and they viscerally feel what you're sharing right now. They're like, yeah, I want to leave too. I just don't know how. And I had this feeling. So I was going to ask you, how did you know you weren't in the right place? I think you answered the question already. I just felt.
Oh no, there was a particular moment. It was a point when I got promoted. We went on this sort of congratulations, we're becoming a senior manager, and we all went down to a place, and we're doing events and team building exercises and all that kind of stuff. Some outside, we were sailing international yachts around the Isle of Wight and all these kind of things, and they were doing some stuff in the classrooms. And we had someone who I now, in hindsight, have discovered was a coach, not a phrase. Coaching wasn't a phrase I was familiar with at the time, but he was doing various things with us. And one of the exercises that he did was something which is probably quite common to a lot of people is write down on a bit of paper what your values are. You know, what's important to you. Okay, well, fair enough, yeah. And then write down on a bit of paper how you perceive the values of the firm, not the ones that they've plastered on the wall and laminated, but how you actually perceive them. So, and the idea of the exercise was how can we bring them closer together and get them closer aligned and all the rest of it. And I wrote mine down, I wrote them down, and I looked at them and went, ooh, you'd think there'd be even one overlap? Oh, nothing. So much. And it was literally one of those moments where everything else was going on around me and other exercises was going on, and I was stood there going, I don't want to be here anymore.
Wow.
And I then had to spend the rest of the course going and trying to set these goals and targets and things, and what you're going to do and what you're going to commit to and all these kind of things, and write it on an envelope, all the things that happen in these sort of things, going, but can I write I want to leave? Is that allowed?
In that moment right there, it dawned on you, holy freaking cow, that I'm not in the right place.
And then looking back at what I'd done through my corporate career, I'd sort of hopped and changed and moved and gone as a comment here and gone abroad for a couple of years, and actually realized what I was trying to do was get away from where I was, but hadn't actually acknowledged it or noticed it. And instead of moving out of the firm, I just stayed within the firm doing other things.
Understood. You were seeking a place where you felt your values were aligned or being met, and it hadn't happened yet.
But not consciously. That was just the
I wish I would have figured that out in my 20s or 30s. And now at 46, I've come closer. Maybe closer.
I was, what would I have been? I was just about 30. I was up 40. Yeah, I turned 40 just after I left. So I was mid-30s when that happened, kind of thing. Probably.
Yeah. Well, so in that moment, how much longer before you made the decision to actually leave?
It was still about 4 years, because I was in that fear state of well, I know I don't want to be here anymore, but I don't know where I'm going to go to. And where I am, I'm getting paid very well, thank you very much, and I like the people I'm around. So you've got all your little sort of tick boxes going on. I'm good at what I do and respecting what I do. So again, depends if we touch on it, but I run with a version of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which hopefully most people are familiar with. But we're hitting all those things in the first few levels. But the one at the top, the self-actualization, the purpose thing, that's what's missing. But if I leave, I'm going to lose all the three beneath it. So
yeah, you just described how a lot of us feel. So you're relating to everyone, I think, that listens to our show. Spot on.
Good.
Yeah. So a lot of connection there on the idea of I'm doing it, and they pay you enough that it's comfortable and you're doing well, that I don't want to give that up because it afforded a certain level of lifestyle. That's how I felt. And maybe I didn't know. Tell me if this connects with you, because in that time for me, I felt like I didn't know where I wanted to go next, and I didn't actually make the conscious time to sit down and work it out because maybe I was trapped. I mean, I was paid well. This is a first world problem. Oh, woe is me, the high paid executive that makes a lot of money that hates what they do. And do we wake up in 30 years and we're like, what just happened in my life? I made a lot of money and it impacted my team and I hated every minute of it. I love my people and I hated what I did. You know,
yeah. I mean, and the reality that when I had said what I was going to do, I did lose friendships. I did have people react badly. I had somebody crying because I was leaving. All the things that are actually going to trigger me because of being a people pleaser and all the rest of it. It's like, that's exactly what I didn't want to happen.
Yeah.
You had other people that were glad for me and wanted me. That was the majority for sure. It's like, go you. But there were these ones where it actually was traumatic, so to speak. And I use inverted commas, traumatic. And again, I refer to the previous frame.
Well, something that really resonates right now is that conversation with either the person that hired you or the person that promoted you, the boss, whoever it was, that conversation where you actually made it known you were leaving. I dreaded and feared that because I didn't want to let the person down. And for me, the person's name, I mean, I'll share it out there, the person's name is Curtis, and I mention it because I actually connected with him today. It was 9 years ago that I left the firm, and we still maintain a relationship. I've seen him out a few times and still love the man. He taught me a lot. He was a good mentor and a friend. And I feared that conversation. I just didn't want to let him down. So I had that pleasing part. I didn't want to let him down, man. He hired me and went on a limb to hire me. So how did that conversation actually, what was the lead up to that and what actually happened then?
So because of, I knew that I had to wait until January because I got paid a bonus in December. And if I handed my notice in before December, I'm going to lose the bonus.
Yeah,
I mean,
same here. Yeah.
And I think we just paid the mortgage off on the house, that kind of thing. So bonus was all coming. So these sort of things are thinking. So it's going to be right as soon as we hit January. And then there were two partners I wanted to speak to. It was an accountancy firm I worked for. I kind of wanted to grab both of them if I could. And I know there was a period where I was in and they just weren't around. And so I was going in every day with the intention of handing it. It's like, are they in? Are they in? Are they in? No. So you'd come back and shout and go, did you do it? My wife goes, did you do it? No. So, and then, got in, saw them both in there in the room by themselves. And it was just a case of just go for it. Remember what you're doing, why you're doing it, and just steel yourself and go, hi, can I have a quick conversation? I'm handing my notice in. And because I've been there for so long, they knew me so well, and I was like an integral part of the team. They didn't know how to react. They were all very positive about it. It wasn't, no one got angry or anything like that. It was like, oh, geez, really? Because if anybody asked that, then I had the firm written through me like a bit of, British rock kind of thing or whatever.
Thank you for reliving that. And I know that must not have been easy. So appreciate you, honor you for sharing that, Andrew. And you made a comment. You said you're a recovering people pleaser. What does that mean, a recovering people pleaser to you?
So when I look back at I made realization. So, I'll give you another challenge that I came over as well, because obviously when you step out of the corporate shield and you set your own entrepreneurial business up or whatever it might be, you suddenly realize what you've been protected from, and now that there's no place to hide. And so it starts triggering off all these things that you weren't even aware of, because you're in a completely different situation. So I discovered that I just discovered that I was a people pleaser ultimately. So as an entrepreneur, I found it difficult to sell, because I found I was getting into people's faces and it's like, actually trying to get them to pay me money. Oh gosh, no, they won't like it if I'm trying to get this many money. It's do whatever you can. I want you to like me. How will I get you to like me? I'll tell you what, I'll drop the price. I'll give it to you for nothing. Let me just like me. That's the people pleaser thing. And one of the key thing that I noticed that was fundamental was I couldn't phone people up that were not expecting my call. So even if it was my best friend, even if it's somebody I knew really well, I couldn't just pick the phone up and give a call.
Okay.
I could email them and say, give you a buzz at 2:00 or arrange something or whatever it might be, and I'd happily take a call. But if they are not expecting my call, I cannot ring them up. And thinking about it, it's like it was a fear of interrupting. In my head, when the phone goes, it annoys me when I'm getting interrupted. I must be interrupting them. And I had situations in the past where I had connected with the phone, people getting angry because I'd interrupted their conversation or whatever it was. And then I go further back, and I remember a time when I was really young and trying to get attention to my dad, and he was angry, so he turned around and shouted at me. So that sort of clawing on the parents' sort of clothes sort of thing, and trousers, skirt, whatever it is, and getting shouted at. So that fed into this sort of fear of interrupting, which there was a rejection prior to that, but it sort of put the icing on it, and then I'd associate it with phones. So if I'm ringing someone up, I need to interrupt them, so I can't do it. And that's made me realize where this came from. So once I'd worked out what it was, I could then start working with someone to try and actually sort of sort this out, so that I was not quite so reacting in such a strong way.
I wonder how that impacted you in your first years in business. How did that realization come to impact you?
I can't pick the phone up someone. It's like, right, just put 10 calls out to people.
No. I feel you.
Yeah.
I've been that call reluctance place too. I got a lot of books on the shelf that say call reluctance. So I'm with you, my friend. Yeah. I remember the first time.
So yeah.
Remember the first time that you ever picked the phone up to make that first pitch or that first ask for an appointment? I remember it very clearly. I was freaking terrified. It was a Friday evening, my second day of training for selling Cutco knives. Here in the U.S., there's a company where we go and do in-home demonstrations of knives called Cutco, and I worked for them in college. And my first call I ever made at the age of 21, I stared at that freaking phone, man, for a long time. And the only motivation that I had that got me over the line to make that first call is that I didn't want to face the assistant manager the next day in the office, because I kind of had a crush on her. I didn't want to face her and have my tail between my legs, because I knew that she wasn't going to go out with me if I came back and said I didn't make any calls. So I was terrified to do it. I did it and still had it for a long time, that call reluctance, man. That was a tough one.
Yeah. I think I've seen it in a few places, but I certainly come up with certainly. So I believe, and it might be more of a male thing than a female thing. It'll be interesting to hear from me. But I think there's a big overlap as well in terms of or connection between that sales process with the dating process. So the thought of ringing up a girl and asking her out, and then she's going to say no, and all that kind of thing. Very similar feelings to ringing up a potential client and would you like to have a meeting and we'll talk about same feelings, same kind of feelings of embarrassment and stress.
I think so. Yeah. Except for there's a difference. The difference is that I was used to getting rejected by girls a long time before that. So I already built up immunity for that. But then the idea of, man, you're taking me back here. the idea of the first phone call for a sales pitch was horrifying. Asking a girl out, I've been rejected so much there that I wasn't as scared. I just kind of assumed it was going to be a no a lot of the time. So maybe the fear was gone there. Yeah, but
but if you think back to your first calls, would there be maybe a parallel?
Terrified, absolutely terrified. I remember the first time I ever asked someone on a date. That was terrifying to me. So yeah,
and that's where practice
progress. Practice makes progress.
Progress. Thank you. Yes, not perfect. Practice makes progress.
That's
right. As long as we don't tip into what you were saying there, and I'm not saying it was, but it's like I'm expecting a no, and therefore the no kind of happens.
Yeah, and that can be kind of the rub that at the time I didn't realize it. I was kind of expecting a no. Nowadays, I'm happily married, so I'm not thinking about the dating side. In the business side, I'm expecting a yes in business. And if it's not a yes, there's not an emotional attachment anymore. The reluctance isn't there anymore.
Yeah, you've got to learn these things and get into the right state of mind, but it's not obvious to us until you've done some work together.
Well, what was that work like for you when you left? Remind me, did you say 2010? When was it that you?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I started on the 1st of January 2011, so it's 1. That's when my left.
Can you chronicle a little bit about? First of all, you left because it wasn't aligned with your values, and it wasn't jiving with you, and you left to go and do something. What was the something that you chose to do, and why did you choose that? What you're doing now?
So in that intervening period, I'd said that it was a coach that had run this exercise for us, and I wasn't familiar with the term. In between that time, I had found out about coaching and knew about it, and I'd actually got a role within the firm which was sort of more people centered rather than just working on business, and actually helping them deal with more personal stuff. I was the go-to person if anybody had an issue, and I really enjoyed it. And I remember I've been away on a job for a while, and then I came back, and it was the Christmas party, Christmas do. And so people hadn't seen me for a while. We had dinner, I sat down, the disco started, and I was just having a drink, and someone would come down, plonk next to me and say, "Oh, how are you doing? Yeah. By the way, can I just ask you a question?" And they'd have some sort of issue, and would chat about it. And well, thanks very much. They'd go away, and then suddenly someone else would sit down, and then another one, and it got to the point where I was going, "Ting, next!" And there was this queue of people, and one of my colleagues had been watching it, and then next week back in the office, I said, "You didn't have a chance to go down, so you didn't have a chance to think, yeah, you must have absolutely hated it." And I said, "No, I loved it. Absolutely awesome. Loved it."
Awesome.
Because you're seeing instant change, instant solutions. Part of my makeup is I like solving problems. That's part of my inner why, and it taps straight into it. It's like, I've got a problem. Okay, I can help you with that, or I can help you help yourself with that, even better. But yeah. So anyway, found out about the concept of coaching. I managed to get the firm to train me up to pay for a coaching qualification. Nice. Thank you very much. To say it would help with my leadership and all the rest of it. And then when I left, I stepped out into created a very specific niche for me in the coaching space. So a little bit of context now. So the job that I did does not exist in America in the same way. So I have to give a bit of explanation. But it was in the realm of insolvency. So you have your Chapter 11 in America. And in Chapter 11, when a company goes bust, lawyers get involved, and the company kind of runs itself with a few constraints, and then some deals done and they're off again. It's very different in the UK. The banks have the power to take possession of the company in the same way that they have the ability to take possession of your house if you default on your mortgage. They take the directors get removed as directors, and a firm of accountants are appointed to run that company. And actually, on the ground, hands-on, dealing with it, you start from scratch. Okay, you're in charge. So my job for 17 years was basically running businesses and having to deal with very difficult situations where it's a case of, right, you got to get all the customers on board that they're going to still buy from you. You got to get all the suppliers on board. Even though you owe them money, you've now got to get them to supply you going forward. You've got to get all the employees on board to say, come on, guys, let's all work together. And then navigate it through, trying to keep everything together, hopefully make it profitable, and then sell it as a going concern if you can.
That's it? What? Yeah. You just named so many different stakeholders and so much level of complexity. Oh my goodness, you must have having those conversations with clients, with employees, with suppliers, probably none of whom like you or really are open to you, and they're angry with you and they have questions that are hard to answer. And the first interaction is, Mr. Andrew Miller, nice to meet you. Wow.
Yes. So every conversation with the first introduction to employees, saying company's gone into administration. Hopefully you can get it so you actually pay their wages, but it's not guaranteed. So you need to check whether you can actually pay the wages that they're owed. But you do guarantee it going forward. We're going to try and sell it. We can't guarantee you we're going to keep your jobs. We've got to look at it. We've got to keep it together. Every phone with a creditor is like, you're not going to get paid for anything you're owed to date, but going forward, we can promise you money. Do you want to still pay us? And
what did that teach you about people in the first 17 years? What did that teach you in the first year of doing that? What did that teach you about people? I'll just start something maybe simple, maybe complex. What did that teach you about people in the first year of doing that, Andrew?
In the first year of doing that, I have to think back. That's a long way now. Well, the people doing the job had, and it's including myself in this, you had to find a way to, and anybody in the military, anybody in a medical situation will know about this, but you've got to kind of compartmentalize, build up the walls. You can't get too connected to the emotion of it, or else you won't be able to do your job properly.
Yes, sir.
If you get my meaning. So there's an element of wall building going on. Now, different people did that in different ways. Some people actually turned it into some element of cruelty, and they could actually be quite nasty in the way that they approached it, or sarcastic, shall we say, and they can be quite mean. I always tried to be empathetic and kind as much as I could. I remember one of the first jobs I was on, it was a... do you have bingo in America?
Yeah.
You don't do bingo. Do you have bingo halls?
Bingo, the
Probably
game?
not.
Yeah.
Anyway, Anyway, it was a bingo hall that had gone bust, and the guy running it, I was sort of showing some potential purchases around and met the guy, and he said to me, and I said, I've only been there a few weeks, and he says, "You're not like the others. You're actually a human being. The others, I feel this sort of dead cold look, but I can see you actually care," kind of thing. So you do, but you have to hold it back a little bit, because if you care too much about things that could go down or whatever, then you can get caught up in it. So you do have to. So you can still be human and empathetic, and this is the thing. We had people where we got Christmas cards from employees. There are situations where people thanked me for being made redundant, not because they were glad of it, but they knew because you were open and you communicated with them and let them know what was going on and were appreciative of the work they were doing. Then, when it got to the point of it's not work, they knew that you had done your best and it wasn't your fault. They weren't blaming you. It was situations outside of that. So you can navigate that way through.
It sounds like a challenging position for someone who is a recovering people pleaser with a high empathy and a high care.
Well, that's recovering. Imagine the phone calls that I'm having telling people they're not getting paid, they're not going. So little scarred on the phone side of things for sure. and just about everybody I knew that wasn't involved in that space that I knew from other things. So it was like, oh, is that what you're going to do? Yeah. Well, I see. Hope I don't meet you, because obviously that I'll be the Grim Reaper. It's like a bad image. So all said jokingly, but it was all a case of. And I have had physical threats. I've had some rather violent people staring in my face. I've had people telling me, "How do you sleep at night?" All these sort of things as well. So you do get abuse as well. But all good. So anyway, point B. Now the other thing around that was, of course, when I say the directors lose their powers, but unless they are actually genuinely shown to be doing something dodgy, you still work with them. They know their business. Everybody knows their business. It's not our job to know everything. This is why I end up being very useful as a coach. I don't need to know. I just need to be able to understand enough and challenge things here and there, but work with what we've got. So you work with the directors. So through that as well is you then do realize the emotional connection that exists between a business owner and their business, which doesn't, certainly at that time, wasn't really talked about. Business is business. That's what you do.
Right.
Systems and processes. And yes, I get all that.
That's right.
But at the heart of it is this human being. And when they're watching everything that they have built collapse in front of them, it has an impact on their confidence and their belief and all the rest of it. And luckily, this wasn't a situation for me, but I'm not too far removed. I know other people who I worked with where basically the director, should we say, didn't make it. They got so depressed by it that they committed suicide. And that is not that uncommon. And we're talking about people who, okay, they may have made a mistake, but not always. But who hasn't made a mistake, generally, usually genuine, honest people who have done their best, tried to put other people first, put themselves last, put all their money in, lost everything, and kept going. So when I stepped out of working it was KPMG I worked for, and set on my coaching, my initial niche was helping people going through some sort of financial difficulty and then insolvency deal with the emotional stress of going through it.
Wow. I bet that was something that as you said, that there's not a role like this out there because business is business. There's no emotion in business. I mean, this is just business. And to have someone come along that has a heart-centered approach to really empathize and hear and listen and coach, that feels like a powerful place where you can really, connect and help people through some tough times.
And I had because I knew the arena, because I knew what the letters that people would send and the sort of messages that were coming out, I can interpret it into there. You don't need to worry about that. That's just stuff that gets sent out. Okay, this is important when you deal with this, and but also at the same time start getting into some sort of deeper psychological things as well, because you're going through people with a lot of trauma. So I started learning, as well as the basic coaching stuff and that sort of thing, I then started looking into more deeper therapy type things that could actually sort of help people cleanse the stuff. And again, as I'm going through my own journey of not being able to pick the phone up to people or whatever it might be, and I'm learning how to cleanse my own stuff, and then I'm reusing that with other people.
Something that resonates with me is you shared that there was one, or maybe multiple, but at least one person that would send you a Christmas card or a letter. You're different, so thank you. That feels like the fuel that would keep you going in something like that. Someone appreciates it and recognize that you're not the cold machine. You're human and you're here to help. What impact did letters like that have on you and still have on you in your journey today?
Well, I'll again flip it around, because you have hit the nail on the head to a certain extent, and one of the reasons why I kind of wanted to leave was when in the main, what would happen is you'd have a job, you'd run that company as long as you can, you're trying to sell it. So ideally, good win, business sold on, all jobs saved, which did happen quite a lot, luckily. So final day, contracts signed, it's all handshakes, slap on the back, thank you very much, feel good, and all the rest of it. That lasts for about half an hour. You go back to the office. The bank says, oh, thank you very much. Where's my money? Here's the next job. And sometimes what would happen is still be interactions with the new company, but now they're the new company, suddenly we're the enemy again, and all those good relationships would disappear. So you never really saw or able to appreciate the benefit that was going through, because it all just either went away or even soured a little bit. So when I was talking earlier on about working with people and seeing the change there and then and being able to see that grow, that's where that shift for me happened. It's like, business is one thing, people's where it counts. And that's where I'm interested in going.
Absolutely. Well, fantastic. Well, today, fast forward to where we are right now today, I would start with, what's the big driving motivation or reason that you get up right now every day today?
My mission is to change the way that success is measured in business. Now, we all know as individuals that success is not boiled down to one simple thing. But if you look how society treats success, it's about money, the end. Okay, you might call it profits, you might call it sales, you might call it power, you might call it, but ultimately it comes down to money. So we are these complex creatures living in a very simple environment which does not match what we actually feel. And consequently, a vast majority, not all obviously, but a vast majority of our stresses, but certainly in business, are caused by this disconnect between what we want to do and what society is telling us to do. Now, at one end, when you think about these people who've lost everything, they were good. They were not enjoying life back then. That's not a good time when they've lost everything. But when you think about it, the depth of that pain is massively increased because we're told if you lose all that money, you're a failure. So there's a huge bucket of shame and stress. They may load on themselves, but it's been brought in by all the messages that we get around us not to do it. You can read so many books about you have to fail to succeed, and all the rest of that doesn't really help you when you're going through it. So that pain is exacerbated by this. Money's important. Flip side, at the other end of things, you can find really successful people who've got as much money as you could possibly work. This business is working, boom, 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 everything's great, and they're still not happy with life. There's a huge. I've met them. You've probably met them. They're being treated for stress. They're being treated for anxiety. They've got depression, even though in a business sense they've got it all. So clearly, having money doesn't make you happy. So that can't be the right measure.
Agreed. Definitely not the only measure. And I 100% agree with everything you've just shared. I know a ton of people that are rich on paper with money, like with this physical wealth, that are miserable. So I'm with you.
Yeah. And that's the concept of, so my company's called Business Enjoyment. That's my brand. You should enjoy what you do. I don't have an issue with money. I know how much pain there is when you don't have enough, because that was my life. I've worked with these people that have lost everything. I know how much of an impact. But if we can take the pain away of that, if we focus on the things that really matter to us and worry less about it being about the dollar, then we can actually get more success for ourselves and bring enjoyment and happiness into our life at the same time.
Bingo. Yes. I love the way you just brought it full circle. 100% agree. And now I'm starting to see a bigger picture. So help us to understand why is it important for us to even have a conversation around things that matter to us?
Do you even need to ask the question?
I think sometimes
the
most direct and simple question, it may be the one that people, it's cliche, and they may think that they all know it, and yet everyone's miserable, or a lot of people are miserable, because they don't know how to approach that question. And you're an expert on it. So if I'm not feeling congruent inside, if I don't like what I do, or if I'm miserable, maybe I make good money and I'm miserable. If I'm not content in whatever I'm doing professionally, how might I start if I were to have a conversation with you? How might you be able to help me?
Yeah, and actually you tap into a follow-on thing from there as well, where actually you feel okay, which we'll come back to. So hold that thought as well. It's like you may not feel bad, you feel all right, whatever. Okay. So we'll come back. But one of the issues with us as people is that we are really, really good at putting up with suffering.
Yeah.
We need an element of resilience. We need an element of stubbornness. But we hold them to a paragon of virtue, which is like, this is the be all and end all. You need to keep going. You never give up. It's all this sort of, the hyperbole all around this kind of thing. But if you're stood in front of a brick wall, and you bash your head against a brick wall, and all the people around you are applauding you and going, yeah, you gave that wall a really good smack with your head, what are you going to do? Are you going to keep smashing your head against the brick wall just because everybody around you says, go you? Haven't you got a resilient forehead? Or are you going to go, can I do something different?
Yeah, you put it that way. Yeah, I'm going to do something different, or I'd like to. I don't want to hit my head against the wall.
Yeah, and now we don't know what that is yet, but let's have a look. Let's at least have a look around and not smack our head against the brick wall for any longer. Now, the other thing is that when we are in enough pain, then we will do something about it. The problem is we're really good at tolerating. We are good at building up resilience. So we like to sit in our little stew of misery, because we found a way of being comfortable in discomfort. And the problem and the challenge lies is that to move from there to a better place actually creates more pain before it gets better. So for an example, if you, I don't know, let's say you've dislocated your shoulder, you can get to a point where it's uncomfortable, it's not really working that well, but you can just about manage the pain. We all know what needs to be done. We've all seen it on sports shows or whatever, in terms of how to get a dislocated shoulder back in. We've all seen Mel Gibson do it in Lethal Weapon 2.
Yes,
whatever it might be. It's going to hurt to get, but we have to go through that pain in order to have our shoulder working again. And that analogy works whether that's a dislocated finger or a splinter in your finger or whatever it might be. We find a way of getting comfortable. Then things need to get worse for a little bit before they get better. And I think some people call that the loser trap. So that as things start getting worse, then actually go, no, I'm going to go back to safety. I know where I am. I'm familiar with this. Whereas going to this new world can be quite scary. Now, if I was to ask most people to sort of say, how are you right now? Are you enjoying your life? Are you enjoying your business and that kind of thing? You will get some that are if you score it out of 10, you will get some that will say that are having a bad time that might score it 4, 5, 6. And normally when we're in those sort of levels, we think that could be better. There's something we can do about it. There's very few that will score higher than 7. We can tend to default at, I'm not going to go for 10 because you can never be 10, and 8, 9 looks a bit arrogant, so I'm going to go 7. So we kind of get to the position where it's all right, that'll do. It's not too bad. Again, being earlier on saying I've not had a miserable life. Yeah, it was the right kind of thing. But if you think about it, 7 out of 10, that's 30% you're leaving on the table.
Yeah.
Now, if you were in business and put your business hat on and looked at you were doing your systems and process and your profits and looking at all the numbers and all the things that are important to a business, and someone came around and said, "Do you realise you're leaving 30% of your profits on the table? You're not even going near it."
Yes.
Someone's going to have a word with you.
Yes.
Why should we prevent ourselves from looking at that extra 30% of happiness?
Yeah. Why should we? We should be looking at that. If we can get out of our own way, out of the reactive of the moment and look at it, then it makes a lot of sense to look at it. Makes me think about my own 30%, wherever that might be. Yeah, I'm with you.
And that's the distinction. So when I talk about business enjoyment, some people think, I'm okay because I'm not bashing my head against a brick wall. I don't have a bleeding forehead. I'm all right. I'm not in pain. But there's also a message out to those people who are at 7 out of 10 and saying, this is for everyone. There's still more you can get out of life than you're currently getting if you're in that 7 out of 10 trap, as I call it.
There's still more we can get. It's interesting because Yeah.
And into that, and again, drawing back to where this is all the loop I was bringing around at the beginning, this is where we get into purpose. This is where we get into finding that thing which is making a difference to someone or something out there, which totally connects and resonates with what goes on in here. So it's more than just doing stuff for other people. It's something that connects.
Making a difference out there, and it's something that connects for each of us in here. That's how we find purpose. I think that's what I'm feeling.
That's the consequence of purpose. So to go looking for purpose, you have to go inside to work out who you are, and then look outside to work out what is that thing out there that's a reflection of me. To create that resonance frequency.
Wow. Business enjoyment, to find that purpose in the business. What might an engagement for you, like a coaching discussion or call or an event, what might someone experience in something like that? And that's a big umbrella. A lot of different things to go there.
It depends where they are. So because of business enjoyment is an overarching thing, it's a concept. It's a move. So we've got to get them up to the 7, and then we're at the 7. We want to move beyond that. So there's a lot. So if we're below 7, then we've got to look at what traps we're running, what patterns we're running, what beliefs we're running that we are holding on to that are creating the pains and the suffering that we're enforcing on ourselves, or the self-sabotage, the perfectionism, the imposter syndrome, the fear of rejection, the fear of losing everything, all these sort of things that might be going on. So we need to understand what those patterns are. When we're moving into the top space, then it's a case of, who are you? What makes you tick? What makes you cry? Tell me about a time when you saw something that made you swell up with emotion so powerfully that you just wanted to tell everyone about it, and it could be a good thing, whatever it might. And then we can start understanding, pulling together little pieces of.
I love the way you just did that. You went to a question, tell me about a time, and it was a time when you were at your most connected or most alive or most emotion that was felt. I love that frame of looking back and looking for those moments, those specific moments when you felt that emotion or felt congruent, whatever you might want to call it.
And this is what got me to, I think, to my sort of fear of rejection thing. I mean, I remember when the Olympics were in London.
Yeah.
We went to see some of the Olympics, but we saw let's spend a week watching the Paralympics. And I was very conscious there were a lot of people that were getting all excited and whatever about the Paralympics, but there was that element of pity with it, which if you know what I mean, it's like, oh, well done, he's running because he's only got one leg, and it's like, no, these are athletes, these, yes, they're doing some amazing things, but let's not patronize them on the basics. Let's look at actually who they are for who they are. And I realized there was one event, and I think it was like a 400 meters. We're in the stadium, and there was one guy who was 5 miles behind everybody else. It was only a 400-meter race, but he was still an hour behind everybody else. He was just sort of, on the track by himself. Everyone had finished already, and he was coming around. And as he moved slowly around the track, you could just see this wave of people cheering, standing up and cheering and giving him support and all the rest of it. And then the tears just are going down my face at this point because I'm swelling up with it. And then it's like, well, why am I getting emotional over that? Because it's not about there's someone that's with difficulties and overcoming challenges and that kind of thing. That's not what it was. I know what it is. He's been accepted. He's being accepted by these people here, and I can imagine his story through life. I don't know his personal story. I think he wasn't from an African nation, but you can imagine how he would all his life he may have been a minority or on the sides or on the edges and all the rest of it. and here he's a hero. Here he's welcome. Here he's appreciated for what he is doing. And from there came the clue. It's like, yeah, being part of something. That's that community, that being accepted. What's the opposite of that? What's the opposite? Oh, hello, fear of rejection. And started putting together all the little jigsaw pieces and so on and so forth.
I want to honor you and appreciate you for everything that you've shared. I feel like I've been walking with you on a journey, and I feel that my emotional intelligence, just by being around you, it's rubbed off on me. And I feel like your aura has helped me to come in touch with my feelings a little bit more. So thank you for the empathy boost. I genuinely mean that, because that's not my natural strength, and it glows from you, and it's an attractive quality that's magnetizing me. So I appreciate that. Yeah, I was going with that. I just felt compelled to share that, Andrew. That was amazing. And how might our audience find out more about you or connect with you in business enjoyment, or just your website? How might we connect with you, Andrew?
Yeah, so if you're more interested in the business enjoyment concept, then have a guess what my website's called. Oh, hello, businessenjoyment.com. Crazy, eh? Jump on there, then pop-up will come up. You can have a look at my TED Talk, which I've given a flavor of some of the bits I talk about, but more than just money. And there's also an option when you go there to download the accompanying book that goes with it.
Nice.
And then beyond that, LinkedIn's best place to go for. Andrew Miller is not the rarest name on the planet, so you might need to do business enjoyment as well, and I should come up. And depending when this comes out, should be
July.
Out by the time. Yeah, so it will be out. So I've got a new book coming out online. And there's an audio version as well. And that is, we're going in very specific here. So this is called Unleash Your Legacy. And it's about how child-free entrepreneurs leave their mark on the world.
Huh.
So when I talked about purpose, I talked before about there's people that go through trauma and they need that trauma to kick them out of that 7 out of 10, 5 out of 10 trap we talked about. So sometimes trauma is the thing. And then what other people tend to do is they fall into my purpose is my family, and family becomes a big part of purpose. Now, I don't have kids. My wife and I chose not to have children. Very happy about it. So my journey's been very different. I can't rely on that. I said, I have not had a traumatic, so I don't have trauma to uncover my purpose, and I don't have children to be part of my purpose. I've got a boring background of very sort of average life. How do I find my purpose, and how do I get connected to that? And so there's a different nuance for people who don't have children. Not better, not worse, just different. You've got to look at it in a slightly different way. So, legacy ultimately is creating a business that's built around that purpose. So the big thing, true purpose is you want it to be a big thing. You want it to run on with beyond you. If you can achieve it in a couple of weeks, job done, move on. It's not the biggest purpose. So, we want something. So creating a business that's going to go on with beyond you and keep delivering that purpose, whatever that might be. And in my case, as I say, I want to change the measure of success. I'm attached to the fact that I might not do it, but if I can create something that runs beyond me to keep that rolling, and that's where we get into the space of legacy.
Fantastic. Well, I certainly will look forward to, by the time that we launch, to add your new book to the show notes so our listeners can get it there, and we can find you at businessenjoyment.com. Also, your TED Talk. So excited to do that. That's going to be we're going to link that in the show notes as well, the TED Talk. So this has been a masterclass on emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And when you started, you're like, I haven't had any trauma. Oh, well, I think a lot of people might disagree because they're living in that challenging spot right now of they're not living congruent to their purpose. And
again, I want to talk to that thing about, when having watched the people who have in objective sense, a really difficult life. As I say, I've not had to suffer any prejudice through my life, or the discriminations, or had anybody die at a young age, or go through the drug abuse. None of that is part of my life. So, as I said before, we can fall into the trap of thinking that my challenges aren't valuable enough, they aren't worthy enough of, but they are, and that's a key thing. And one of the important things is these things are relative. It's relative to where we are, what our current baseline is, and then we fear, stress, and happiness are connected or relative to that line, rather than it being an absolute, this is good, yes, this is bad, which is why you can have somebody who's got absolutely everything being absolutely in depression, and you can have somebody in the slums of India with absolutely nothing to their pain, and they can be laughing and happy and jolly and all the rest of it. That doesn't mean we shouldn't do something to improve the lot of either. That's not saying, oh, we'll just leave them be, they're happy. That's what it's about. You can still find joy. Well, one of my lines is that joy in the face of darkness is the path to light.
Joy in the face of darkness is the path to light. For the listeners who are not driving right now, pause and replay that. Joy in the face of darkness is the path to light. Wow. Andrew, if I asked you the Eternal Optimism, what is eternal optimism? What does that phrase mean to you?
For me, it basically means it'll be all right. It'll be all right. Now, it's a general thing. So you in specific things, you can be more realistic. Things go wrong. I'm going to set up a new thing. I'm going to trial a new program. I'm going to launch a new book. Being optimistic delusionally means, it's going to be brilliant. It might not be. You're going to test and measure, but big picture, we're going to be all right. So we might have failures along the way. Things are going to be problematic, but that's life. Big picture,
awesome.
We'll be all right.
So aside from your books, which we're going to have in the show notes, what is a book or two that have been impactful in your journey in life? Any book? Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can I give you three? One is for the people pleasers listening, and it's particularly for male listeners, but there's a book called No More Mr. Nice Guy.
Yeah.
Now, there's a number of that title. There's one called Dr. Robert A. Glover. That will open up some stuff for you. Oh, yeah, that'll open some stuff up with you. If people are interested in the concept of different measures of success and that sort of, and business shouldn't all be about sales and profits, good book called is The Growth Delusion by David Pilling. Looks at things like our obsession with GDP, how fake and false and irrational that is, and better ways of doing things. And then the third book, which I would imagine has been mentioned quite a few times on your podcasts, it's one of the classics, but Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, for me, is the most amazing book ever written. It's just, if you've not read it, get it and read it. If you've got a copy but not read it, read it. If you have read it, read it again and again and again. There is so much stuff in that book. It's just...
Thank you. Amazing. And Andrew, this has been a real treat, and I just thank you. I appreciate you. I love you. I thank you for being here. It's been really, really awesome to have you on. And out of all of this, if those of you listening out there, if you're just listening on the podcast, you can't see Andrew, then I encourage you to go to YouTube here in a couple months when this comes out, because you would think that I'm talking to a man after all the stuff in the business that he talked about. You would think he has no hair. He has an amazing head of hair. This is amazing head of hair that you have here. So I want to compliment you on that. And in your background, you have a giant smiley face pillow, which I love. You've got some really cool stuff here.
Those are actually representations of my business enjoyment model. So
awesome.
We've got a turtle for feeling safe. We've got a penguin for creative community. We've got a lion for inner confidence. We've got a killer whale for find your purpose. We've got money hang-ups. So we've got overarching enjoyment. Enjoy your business with a smiley face. Yeah. So we get the More Than Just Money book, and it'll tell you all about it.
Well, Andrew, again, thank you for showing up today and giving us your best. We really love you and appreciate you, man. Thank you.